this is KRBrickBot, and I'm finally getting around to reviewing the obligatory combiners sold separately of the 3 main Tobots of every season. Titan V. This is a somewhat unconventional box shape, just has one end slanted to the side, not unlike the War for Cybertron boxes. This side of the box is pretty dark with some flaring line streaks and the names just kind of blending in there. Tachyon, Wild Chief, and Jet Thunder. I mean, they really just bleed into there. I mean, it's partially legible, but not that legible. And then there's the where each of the components go in the combiner and the sword. The gradient transitions to some grid lines and the toy photo. Interestingly, there's not a single CG rendered animation model priority model on this thing. So at least this packaging is honest. There are no CG illustrations of any of the toys. What you see on the packaging does not vary from what you will get in the box. Other things, yeah, there's another close-up portrait. Some green to yellow to white gradient. Yeah, the back looks very similar to the front, doesn't it? Just a cityscape and a 3-tone gradients, like the also space galaxy and more action lines in the back. And more cosmic galaxy photos. I mean, I guess compared to the other packaging designs, this one looks maybe a little plainer. Also to note, there is an intentional crease folding line across here. I guess to make the packaging a bit more flexible. Okay, I think it might be useful when you have to squeeze your fingers in there to pull it out. Yeah, so the plastic shell is like this, and to the side, the extra slant actually has some stuff filled in it. This pre-assembled cardboard piece is like a sword holder for the sword blade. The instructions, and another same shaped triangular piece just to fill out that box space. So here we have the components of Titan V in their vehicle modes. The red speedster that forms the arms, the blue off-roader that forms the legs, and the white aircraft that forms the torso. They just lifted the Master V combination in colors wholesale. But they're different shades. Tachyon now in red, with a little less detail. One thing without the toe key, but it still has that scanner. Still has all the same sculpting details. The obvious hinge bolts notwithstanding. Similar front headlights with baby blue headlights and the Tobot V license plate right under there. And the ring wheels here, although they don't have Tachyon printed on them except for right here. I don't know, but it looks like the wheels on the smaller one look bigger than on the bigger one. Even this tiny thing can afford separately molded transparent plastic rear lights. But other than the white paint here around the toe key slot, it's pretty plain. Wild Chief now in dark blue and orange, and dark gunmetal. Yeah, pretty similar details here, like the winch, the hooks, the bumper, the transparent blue headlights. A actually painted V crest there. Somewhat extended hood pieces here. The sides are looking pretty plain, just no white striping here. But if you notice on the roof, that looks like the roof bar positioning has been repositioned to be more in the center rather than in the back because of the hinges. The mudguard detailing is much more consistent with the all gunmetal. The back is also pretty cleaned up for the combination mode. Painted red tail lights. The back windows are molded in, but not painted, but at least they have the painted tail lights. Unlike these, but this one has more red paint than this side. Also, there are no extra bars hanging down from here. And Jet Thunder, the unrealistic A10 Thunderbolt in a much more fetching white and red color scheme. This looks more dynamic than the drab gray with some orange. Yeah, imagine if the combination colors of the Tobots were used for the individual bots. But the inaccurate wing configuration is even more inaccurate. They even shifted much more forward and permanently there because they're the hinges. Yeah, so if you want to replicate that wing position on the regular Jet Thunder, it's halfway there. It's somewhat halfway there, not all the way forward. Just somewhere right there. So this makes it more like a glider than an A10 Thunderbolt. Pretty back-heavy glider. But it still has some good sculpting details like that Air Force style V logo, the Tobot VKR on the tail fin. Different waffling style. Number 3 over here, a different style of number 3, mind you. Much more slanted. And for a smaller size, it looks like it has fewer but much more prominent studded bolts on here. And it actually has a longer machine gun. Size comparisons. Red Tachyon is looking just a smidge too bigger for this car scale. It looks just about right, but it's a little too big at the same time. On the other hand, the Wild Chief is much noticeably bigger than the standard scale. This looks a bit too big for even for a Hummer Jeep. They aren't even in scale with their bigger toys. This is much taller. Much taller. Once again, oversized Unicron Trilogy cars look better in scale with this. And Jet Thunder looks pretty accurately sized, as accurately sized Seekers are to Autobots in robot mode. The integration. Slide out those legs, hinge them down, split those legs. There's a little circular cutout here so you can get your fingers in there to pull out the feet and toes. And there's a little cutout here to get your fingers in there to pull out the back heels. Pretty smooth insides. And flip this out and soft ratchet that hinge back. Split Jet Thunder at the thrusters. Ratchet those in, fold in those big thick landing gear. Click. Soft ratchet those turbines forward. Fold down this panel to reveal a face, and don't forget to pull out these little antennae that could be easily overlooked. Then slide the torso in until you hear a click. There's little notches here. Tachyon splits right in half. Fold that panel over. First fold the little doors forward. On those transparent hinges, there's a transparent hinge that folds over here. Big, sturdy, transparent hinge that you can't give Hasbro the benefit of the doubt that for. Flip out that little panel, then this little panel, and then flip out that little notch here for the hands and fingers. Slide it right on top. And then plug the chest on here. So of the 3 main Tobot V combiners thus far, this one is looking maybe the silliest or goofiest or less coolest. For one, that is a very skinny and scrawny torso, and the combination cohesion looks like there's a disconnect even though it's connected. As in, it literally looks like the upper half of a plane is just flatly plonked right on top of the flatness of a Jeep. It just looks so flat. The somewhat big, lanky arms with big hands. I do appreciate the black and gunmetal paint on his otherwise really red arms. And the striping pattern here, it does line up perfectly when these bits are folded up. But they're still overwhelmingly red and not much of a colorful breakup in the arms. Arguably, this looks much more visually interesting if the car bits were out front. Just like the mistransformed early photos. I suppose the legs are suitably greebled and detailed enough. These gunmetal bits and the painted silver kind of looks like the underside of a car. Like the tubings and the pipes. And the insides, there's simple ridge cuts here. There's a couple of ridge cuts that flow along with the other bits. There's the finger hole cutouts. And minorly hollow legs. Otherwise, it's pretty filled in. And that cone head, the entire front of the airplane just forming a big cone head with a visor, and there's a face in there, and there's a little antenna. This really evokes that classic demos of that robot romance trilogy of the vintage robot anime. The back is the back, seeing the back of the Jeep bits and the backs of the arguably more visually interesting car bits. And the back of the tail fins is pretty plain. I guess the tail fins do give it some nice short wings and just the booster parts of the jet engines. And they're backwards. But that doesn't stop them from blooshing from this end. And he is armed with a big sword formed from the hilt or the chest piece. The chest piece that's painted and molded with the 1, 2, and 3. Although the shapes aren't quite matching the respective toe keys. Just general shapes. But it does have the general color-coded colors like the blue tachyon, red wild chief, and white jet thunder. And I guess just so that it doesn't blend with the gray or orange. Yeah, but this does extend and click into place. Then you can just take a big transparent blue sword blade and just clip it in and then clasp it with those sides. Nice big energy sword, although I think this was just an actual physical silver sword in the show, but doesn't matter. This looks like a nice lightsaber style sword. And those clamps actually grasp the sword blade pretty well. I don't know, it might wear out if you do it too much, but it actually holds it pretty well for what it's worth. And this hexagonal sword hilt clips comfortably into the hand. And it kind of soft rotates, so yeah, so Titan V is armed now with a big old sword. Big old Titan sword. Although that does leave his chest very barren and uninteresting and just naked. It kind of looks naked without any chest to bulk it up. So yeah, that's a trade-off. And if you don't want to have the sword around, you can just plug it into this cardboard stand like a Tobot sword in the stone. Both sides even have the sword printed on there. There's the Titan V and then the Tobot V. Yeah, you could just leave the sword blade like that. Yeah, I guess it's a stylistic way to store and display the extra bits instead of just putting them in a storage box or a zip bag. But the shape might be a little annoying because it's all the way to the edge and it just tilts to the side here unless you kind of just really poke a hole in it, which is, not ideal. So it's kind of a loose sword holder. You just, or leave it like a slant like that, which does not look quite good either. But it can technically store in vehicle mode. Big energy sword on top. You can't put it the other way. You can't put it on the underside. So yeah, leave it off to the side or on top of the plane. Now, compared to the previous Tobot V combiners, he has less bulk than those other two, and his vehicle components are much smaller than those vehicle components. Maybe that's because he's not supposed to be as tall as the other Tobot combiners. If you take a look at the show and toy commercials, you can see that he's a very tall Titan Tobot, just running with the trope of a combiner being much bigger than its parts. He's huge! Colossal, humongous, titanic. Move over, Tobot Titan. Titan V is a real Titan for his name and size.
Boo, how dare they use an old Tobot name for a completely unrelated character?
Well, of course they're not the same character. They're not the same Titan. It's just using the same common word Titan. I don't know, it might get confusing, so the Galaxy Detectives dub might give Titan V a rename unlike Master V and Maximus V, or they just might keep Titan V. So if you put him alongside mainline Transformers, he looks like a pretty sizable combiner. A pretty average height combiner. Or maybe he's not big enough. I wasn't really blindly on board with Titan V at first because of just how lanky and skinny he looks. But when I learned about how titanic he is supposed to be in the show, maybe it feels a little more acceptable to have a somewhat torso lightweight robot if it's gonna be that colossal. And normally I would like to have all my vehicle components scale to each other, but I guess with super robots that can change size at will, I guess I'm willing to give this a pass. If you display this Titan along with these tiny guys, that would probably be a pretty impressive display, even though only the plane would technically scale the most with the others. Articulation. The head is on a soft ratcheted swivel, so you can turn it all the way around, provided the landing gear doesn't get in the way. So the arms only have 2 clicks at the elbow, so it's not even 90. Inward wrist and extra finger articulation, but only inward. I guess that's to get a better grip on the sword. And a tiny bit of inward and outward, not much. And he has no shoulders, no shoulder swivel at all because it's on a square peg. Just taking the cues of the mini Tobot combiners and their completely immobile square shoulders because square pegs hold better than round pegs. This is technically not meant to be the shoulder joint, but it's what you got because how this transforms and how it's really well ratcheted. But it's not meant to because it does unlodge the back wing kibble and the side turbine kibble. And it's more problematic with the toe key in the way, as it will just pop that off because of the landing gear. So he can't do very many sword poses unless you just wave them around near the shoulder. Or simple robotic thwacking. Simple up and down thwacking. Only 2 clicks forward and 2 clicks back, unless you pull out that butt flap, in which case you could go even further. Clicks. Technically 4, but then you will be stressing that spring-loaded mudguard just to automatically snap back. Very obtuse knee, but at least it's a full thigh swivel, full unimpeded thigh swivel, and outward toe, there's not much inward you're going in with that thing. I guess Titan V continues the trend of smaller components but bigger combiner toys than the single robots, but has less articulation overall. That's just been the trend with Tobot combiners. Yeah, but I get it if Titan V is still not your preferred style of Tobot combiner. I think there's a reason why Master V is still popular and constantly reissued. And in a way, I guess it's more of a retro homage. It's like a retro style Tobot combiner, down to its semi-retro limited articulation. While the last two might have been more of the 90s to modern super robot combiner style. Yeah, so it's up to your personal taste and preferences for these unconventional designs, I guess. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe and that. And until next time, this is KRBrickBot signing off.